So today we're going to go over the 13 minutes gameplay demo of Halo Campaign Evolved, and really go through it with a fine-tooth comb to find out all the tiny little nitty-gritty details in the 13 minutes of gameplay. Now there's a lot to cover, but there's also a couple of things that I found that may suggest towards expansive content baked right into the game, but I have a feeling there's a very good reason for these changes that we'll likely discover in due course. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. Now, I've already done a live reaction to this with Lucy at HCS. I've already done a frame-by-frame breakdown of the 1 minute 35 second trailer of Halo Campaign Evolved, as well as just generally like my thoughts and predictions on the Halo CE remake from before I went to HCS Worlds. But today I wanted to really tackle the bulk of where a lot of the information about the campaign remake is coming from, and that's the 13-minute gameplay demo. But I also wanted to touch very briefly on just a few things from the round the table discussion, the trailer itself that I did react to live at HCS, because there's a couple of things in that are interesting and that I just want to focus in on for a minute. But there's also so much from this 13 minutes of gameplay that I wanted to look at, I wanted to address, I wanted to bring up, say, hey, have you guys noticed this, because I've noticed this. But also there's a few things that I've got sneaking suspicions about that you may or may not be on board with. Now, I want to acknowledge all of the little details in this gameplay that I've noticed. However, I will approach this based on what's important to me. Now, that doesn't mean that other perspectives are invalid or any less important. I'm just a lore guy. I am invested in Halo's story, its lore, its continuity, the Halo universe. It's always been my passion, and it's always been what keeps me coming back to Halo time and time again. So little technical things like effects popping in and out, the use of Halo Infinite assets, the use of Halo 5 animations, they don't matter to me as much as some other people. They are important, no doubt about it, they're just not as important to me. And rather than coming on here and just echoing and mirroring what every other content creator has said on this gameplay demo, I think you would appreciate, and I think I would enjoy, delivering my thoughts and my takes and my perspectives and my interests on Halo Campaign Evolved, rather than just following the crowd and just echoing what everyone else has said. So I've taken some time, I've looked back on my own personal experience playing the 13-minute gameplay demo at HCS, I've looked at the raw footage, I've looked at people's footage online, I've looked at the roundtable discussion, all of the details. I've just kind of sat with them, assimilated them, processed them, scripted things out, put notes down, and I wanted to kind of go through and show you guys the things I've noticed that maybe you've noticed, maybe you haven't, and just pass my thoughts on some of the key points of this gameplay demo. So that's enough chatting, let's dive into the details. Now, I've already covered much of this opening cutscene in the previous video. The jet wash, Chief's size and strength in the Pelican, the chin-mounted cannon on the Pelicans, strafing runs, the heat shimmers from the jets being a little too much. I've already covered this sort of stuff, so we can gloss over most of this. However, I will note that the jet wash in this scene materializes out of nowhere, as does some atmospheric haze, graphical issues that I'm sure can be ironed out between now and the launch of the game. Again, some minor examples of textures popping in, but again, likely easily solved. Certainly not as much of an issue for me as it seems to be an issue for some people. They have time. Let them cook. Now here I noticed that Fohammer's Pelican actually swerves further out from the beach while the other begins a strafing run with its nose cannon. We switch to the cockpit view of Fohammer, where the sea spray from the other Pelican strafing run is just about dissipating as Fohammer begins her own strafing run, which severely damages the Spirit, hopefully indicating that most vehicles now are destructible. Back in CE, the Pelican and the Spirit dropship were indestructible. It'd be nice to see real-time damage happening on the Pelican and the Spirit, especially given that it appears like we're getting real-time damage on even character models like the Hunter. The damaged Spirit is briefly visible in the next scene from the bellow of purple flame, but its absence on the beach thereafter suggests it was only damaged and not brought down or destroyed. Little thing to note, Carol Rawley, aka Fohammer, this is her first appearance on screen. Love to see it. She's an interesting character. It was explored. She was explored quite a lot in Halo the Flood. So getting our first look at Carol Rawley, I hope that's not the only look we're going to get. I hope we're going to get a lot more on Fohammer. I do note, however, that the touchdown hit it Marines line is absent, most likely due to a glitch, meaning the line wasn't served and delivered as it should have been during gameplay. Minor problem, can probably be fixed. Immediately to me and to many others, however, the HUD element positioning is significantly different, taking on a more Halo Infinite HUD layout with the HUD visor lines and things like that, with the exception of the motion sensor, which is now inexplicably at the top right. Apparently, with information that's since come out, these HUD elements can be changed and adjusted. To what extent, I still don't know, but at the very least it's been confirmed at least the motion tracker can be moved back to its classic position. It would be really cool actually if a lot of the HUD elements could be like customized and tailored into different locations, because that would just be really cool to be able to customize to your own personal preference. But also like down the line, if the rumours about doing like Halo 2, Halo 3 and beyond are true, and with DLC perhaps, with different armor permutations and how much you could customize the position based. Getting well off of subject here, let's get back on task. The next big thing people notice is that the assault rifle's round count is down from 60 as it was in the original Halo CE down to 32 rounds. Now back in Halo CE, the 60 round magazine meant that the AR was just a lead hose. You could just hose people with bullets until they fell down basically, and it was glorious. Having the AR reduced to 32 rounds puts it more in line with the more contemporary assault rifles we've been playing in more recent games. Now, I understand the comparison to the Halo 3 assault rifle, where I admit, you would, when I spawned into any game and I had the Halo 3 assault rifle, I would switch it out to practically any other alternative weapon that I could immediately upon getting into gameplay. Because the Halo 3 assault rifle, I'm sure most of us would agree, is probably the weakest of the assault rifles. So I completely understand and appreciate the knee-jerk reaction that if this is like the Halo 3 assault rifle, it's gonna be not good to use. But that ignores the possibility that it's more akin to the Halo Infinite assault rifle. Now again, I completely understand the arguments that people want a Halo CE remake, they don't want a Halo Infinite remake, they don't want a Halo 5 remake, they don't want a Halo Reach remake, they want Halo CE remade. I completely understand that. Out of all of the assault rifles across all of the games, Halo Infinite is most likely the best and most well balanced. It is truly a weapon of utility. It's good up close, it's good at medium range when it's used with burst firing, and of course at long range it kind of falls off, as you would expect. And the balance between it and other weapons like the Sidekick are just beautiful. They work harmoniously with each other. It is a weapon of utility, not one that when you get into the game you immediately trade it with practically any other weapon that's laying in front of you. So although it is a departure going from the 60 round magazine down to the 32, if it's a weapon of utility, if it works effectively on the battlefield and is balanced well with other weapons within the sandbox, I think it may be a fair trade-off. I completely understand the resistance due to these changes from the original game, but I have a feeling there's a very good reason for these changes that we'll likely discover in due course. The pistol is still beefy and powerful, there's nothing more to say there. Here, Fohammer is seen flying past, and her tether armature system for deploying the Warthog is visible, even if she currently lacks a Warthog. We'll circle back to that. Here, I'm unsure if the redesign of this first structure is due to graphical overhaul, or if they simply wanted the structure to have an archway that the Pelican could fly through. If it's the latter, it's a rule of cool decision, but for what that adds to the experience versus what it changes to the classic silhouette, I'm unsure if it's really worth the trade-off. Sprint appears for the first time here, briefly allowing Chief to catch up with the Marines and get into a leading and fighting position, ready to draw the fire of the Covenant. At least that's my interpretation of what this particular player who was playing this demo did. I have a lot to say on Sprint, and in a much more fair and comprehensive manner than I could probably accurately cover in this video, as this is going to be a long one anyway. But I'm happy to put those arguments and those perspectives on Sprint into their own separate video, if you would like to see it. If you would, let me know in the comment section down below. Next, I note that the supply crate has changed to a variant that I've never ever seen before. I mean, beyond looking Covenant-y, like a purple alloy and organic-esque shapes, they're just arbitrary crates. I don't think it's a positive development. I don't particularly like the look of these Covenant crates. I prefer the old type, but I don't know. They're just crates. I mean, in CE, beyond providing cover, that's really all they were used for and all they were good for. I mean, obviously, in later games, they actually held weapons, so they became partially utilised on a semi-regular basis. But you could probably go beyond that. Case in point, I note the lack of the communications crate. I'd like to hear that classic comms crate noise on the quiet parts of this level once again. You know, the old internet modem sounds that we remember from back in the day. It'd be nice to bring them back, but it would also be an ideal opportunity to turn them into audio terminals, or similar ways to gain additional narrative from the Covenant's perspective. Maybe something from Fel Vadami, who will eventually become the Arbiter, or Zukazamami and Yap Yap, perhaps foreshadowing the Hunter encounter that happens later in this level. But we'll touch again on audio logs and terminals in just a little bit. Moving on, there's plenty of blood splatter here, and so there bloody well should be. The plasma pistol is the more classic silhouette, however, the overheating cover on the upper surface of the plasma pistol opens the wrong way, or the opposite way that it used to. It used to open kind of this way, and now it opens. I don't know why that's happened. Onward from this, I'm still not immediately clear where Fohammer found a Warhog to bring in minutes after storming the beach, but it would be nice if this was explained somehow. Again, it's a very minor nitpick, but as a lore guy, it kind of matters to me. The continuity would be nice to be carried in some regard. It would be nice if perhaps the Pelican that was shot down in that opening cinematic by the Spirit was actually carrying a Warhog when it went down, and it, you know, dropped it onto the beach, and then it's itself ditched into the water or crashed into the beach further around the island, and then when Fohammer drops off the chief and then takes off and flies away, it could circle around, pick the Warhog up, and then come back and drop it off. It's just a thought. It just adds to that continuity. Anyway, we get to the actual Warhog drop, and there is a noticeable wheel wobble as the Pelican drops the Warhog towards the surface. Now again, this is likely a very minor graphical issue that can be solved. Not a huge concern there. Moving on from here, the cliffside is now missing the section where the rock face has fallen away, exposing the fauna metal beneath. This, in the original game, serves to remind us that Halo's natural appearance is only ever skin deep, and shows natural weathering and entropy over time. The first fauna structure that we come to is much taller and more pointed than it was originally, much more imposing, and whilst more thematically in keeping with like the beam towers and things like that, it's an obvious departure from the more squat facility we're used to. Again, the metal is very shiny here. Now, I acknowledge in my previous video that many people said that even I myself said that this is made of exotic and advanced fauna metals that may have properties that allow them to self-clean, and we have to bear in mind that the facility itself, the entire Halo ring, is being maintained by Monitor, its sentinels, its constructors, and all in sundry of automated systems, so they're probably keeping these structures clean as well. And yes, I have to agree, it absolutely makes sense, and I concede that my dislike of the very shiny exteriors is more of an irrational personal preference than an objective criticism. It's not game breaking for me, I prefer them to look a little bit weathered, as opposed to like they literally were built yesterday. I understand that the lore could and should allow for these structures to keep themselves ultra clean, and it adds more to their kind of their advanced mystique, but the foreign aesthetic has always been equal parts advanced and ancient. It's hard to feel ancient when things are gleaming bright and shiny. Swings and roundabouts. Next, I noticed that when the Warthog goes up to the platform on this facility, the slope to this platform on the far side nearer the cave is now absent. Now again, this isn't game breaking, but it does change the encounters here. If you choose to go up the platform first, rather than going straight over the hill down to where the Spirit dropship is and attack those jackals that are just being deployed, when you start attacking the Covenant on this platform, the jackals down below hear that happening and can use that slope to get up and attack you from behind, so you need to be ready for that encounter. Now that slope is absent, that encounter doesn't happen. The jackals now can either walk through the cave system, which I've not seen in any of the playthroughs that I've watched online, or they have to walk the long way round to engage you, which I also haven't seen in any of the playthroughs I've seen online, which means this encounter just doesn't happen anymore. Instead, they just stay down on the beach. knowing full well that you're up there and you're killing its allies, and they just kind of wait for you to arrive. Moving on, and again, back on the physics side of things, the overcharged plasma pistol shot that is fired down the corridor now arcs to nearby surfaces with a less electrical discharge. You can see several blue sparks of energy arcing between the actual green plasma ball and the walls and floor as it travels down the corridor. Ion channels, electrical discharge, superheated plasma, it's all physics. It's beautiful, it's great to see in game. It's also, I think I said it before, great preservation of darkness and light in this corridor, rather than like the overly bright saturated corridor that we had in Halo Anniversary. It's also in this darkened environment, the shield recharge effect is much easier to see. Now it is more subtle and certainly less pronounced, but it is the hexagonal-esque pattern. It's not the same one that we have in Halo Infinite that's much more pronounced, much more aggressive. It's much more subtle. It's nice, it's a good effect, and adds a nice continuity across all platforms of Mjolnir. Now, something very interesting to note here is upon clearing this area, after the doors are sealed, Chief backpedals up the slope and then turns to go up the next, and a small but noticeable recess on the back wall can be noticed, dimly lit by two lights. Now, I can't tell, nor can I remember when I was playing through myself, whether this is just a small recess or if it implies a doorway to corridors and facilities beyond. But this is interesting given what I've noticed next, and how that plays into things a little later on. Following this, Chief returns to the platform, gets back on the Warthog and then jumps off of the platform. Now, following this jump, you can find the jackals that once would have come up that slope to reinforce their allies. During this engagement, I spied what looks like a triangular foreigner door beneath that platform. Now, whether this is a new area, a hidden Easter egg, or just set dressing is anybody's guess at this point, as we don't really get much closer than this. However, later there is something worth paying attention to, so bear that in mind. Broadly, I have this niggling suspicion, based on how the gameplay trailer almost avoided looking directly at it, both it and the earlier recess on the wall, that may perhaps hint towards alternate ways around the facility that may or may not come into play later on in the gameplay, or is simply built there to build out the facility and its implied functions and environmental storytelling. Only time will tell. Next, we come to the beach with the overturned Warthog. Again, good opportunity to do some environmental storytelling. Was this from a prior recon group? Was it dropped by the Pelican that was shot down at the start? Don't know. But this could perhaps be an ideal place to put a UNSC audio log or video terminal of sorts. Now, audio logs were used extensively in Halo Infinite's campaign, and they were a great way to build out the expanded narrative, to tell stories about what was happening at different times during the events of the campaign for those who are willing to go looking for it. And terminals, broadly speaking, have been widely celebrated by the community at expanding the narrative, maybe something worth implementing. Next, we come to the beach with the group of jackals and the path into the interior of the island. Now, yes, there was a tree that was originally there that made getting up the path with a Warthog very difficult, and it has since been removed. But it wasn't that you could never get up there with a Warthog. You could, it was just very difficult. Now, yes, something could be said about keeping that obstacle in place and obviously making it difficult to get up there, thereby rewarding the precision and persistence needed to get the Warthog up there. But the argument that you could never get the Warthog up there in the first place isn't accurate, because you could. I distinctly remember getting the Warthog past that tree, up around, and there was like a low ledge. You could park the Warthog near it, jump up onto the Warthog, then jump up onto the turret because the turret was slightly higher, then get the Marine on the turret to look up towards you, which gave you just a little bit additional height, and then you could jump off the barrel of the turret onto that ledge and then walk around on top of the level. So I distinctly remember doing that, so you can get the Warthog up there even in the OG Halo. But next we get to the real stickler of this argument of being able to get the Warthog up there, and that is the Hunter encounter. Now, yes, with the Warthog you can mow through the Hunters pretty quick, but back in the day you could get the Warthog up there and you could also mow through the Hunters pretty quick. Yes, it's easier now to get the Warthog up there because there isn't an obstacle of a tree in the way, but you could do it. And with further argument, back in the day, if you got out of the Warthog or you were shot out of the Warthog and you had a Magnum, one single shot to the orange flesh on the backs of either Hunter count as headshots and it instantly kills them. That doesn't happen anymore. So yes, while you can mow through them with the Warthog, you could originally do that, but you can no longer one-shot them with the Magnum, so the argument that allowing the Warthog to get up there makes the Hunter encounter null and void doesn't really carry. Next, I've seen some people saying that the structure in the centre of this area is designed to lift the covering plate to gain access to the Halo Ring's internal tunnel and transit system. And I'm seeing a lot of people say that the original design made it look like it could physically lift it out of place and move it out of the way, and that now the design looks like it's not meant to move at all, and that something about the earlier design made it look like it could move. But again, I think this is misremembered events, because the plate doesn't lift clear, it drops downward. There isn't enough room in this area for the plate to lift and be moved completely clear of the hole beneath it. Not even close, in fact. In truth, in the original cutscene, you can see the plate is visible moving back into place from beneath the hole, where there was more clearance to slide it out of the way. But again, we've not seen this specific cutscene in the campaign Evolved remake, so my guess is that the plate probably drops down and then slides clear out of the way beneath the surface, while that structure that hangs over the hole itself retracts into the wall. But again, until we see the cutscene, we can't be certain. And just a last thing to touch on here, worms flee out of the dead corpse of a hunter now when you shoot them, which is a cool little effect. Actually, one last thing. There used to be a terminal in the Halo C Anniversary Edition in this area. It's not obvious this time. The overhead clearance where it was originally doesn't seem to house a foreigner terminal, doesn't seem enough headroom is there to allow that to happen, so it either hasn't been implemented yet, won't be implemented at all, or is on the other side of the structure. Now, earlier in this encounter, it looks like there could be something planned to be here. Perhaps even the Halo 3 style terminal interface hidden behind a panel on this front face, but we've yet to have any solid information on this. Again, terminals and audio logs are a great way to explore more of the story going on beyond the immediately obvious. UNSC terminals and audio logs on downed Pelicans, tablet devices, escape pods and other UNSC facilities would be a cool addition. Audio logs and terminals in Covenant comms crates would be an ideal opportunity to tell the Covenant's perspective on wider events on the Halo. Foreigner terminals on structures of significance would be great, and I'd even be for the opportunity to explore the Flood's perspective through some more metaphysical instances. Next, there's not a huge lot to make of these encounters until we get to the next Hunter encounter. Now, in the extended lore, Zuka Zamami arranged this engagement and Chief came out successful, but Zuka and Yap Yap are actually hiding inside one of these crates in the room with Chief at this exact moment. Evidence of that would be a nice little Easter egg for people paying attention, and it could be something really subtle. It could be elite and grunt footprints going to a crate and then disappearing, suggesting they're inside that particular one, or even something where if you wait long enough you can hear a grunt breathing, excitedly or nervously, and maybe Zuka trying to hush him up. Next, Chief finally goes down to the security station, and I will note here, this security station has a very similar eerie feeling to the phase pulse generator rooms from Halo 3 and Halo CE. Now, Halo CEs were eerie with that factory wind sound that played in the background that made them feel oddly alive, like the facility was breathing and full of a purpose that was utterly lost on us as the player. But in Halo 3 specifically, on the final level, you could find a terminal, which is located within the encircling corridors around a phase pulse generator. Obviously, this Halo is the replacement of the one that is destroyed in the events of Halo CE, so it stands to reason there would be phase pulse generators near the control room. But there's this strange, sterile, purposeful and eerie ambience to these rooms. It's almost like you're being closely watched from darkened corners, and that uncomfortable uneasiness that we feel in liminal spaces that now lie abandoned. That has been captured here perfectly in the Campaign Evolved remake, and I love to see it. The next little thing to note here is that these camo elites now have very weak energy shielding, which is something that is fundamentally different from the original game. Back in Halo CE, active camo elites had no shields. You could one-shot them in the head if you were accurate enough and could figure out exactly where that shimmer was. So this makes this particular mechanic a little bit more in keeping with Halo Infinite. I still don't know if that's a positive or negative development. A nice little touch here, however, is that you can hear Bravo 22, the Pelican that is coming with heavy weapons, actually coming in and crashing outside. You couldn't hear that in the original, so it's a nice little touch to add it. Once back outside, the Chief grabs a warhog and returns to the map room facility, and that triangular door beneath the platform that we spotted earlier now has a clear light shining from the wall and reflecting on the floor to the left of the door, perhaps suggesting that a panel can now be activated to open that door, since Chief just unlocked the security terminal. Again, this isn't confirmed, but it is suggestive towards expansive content. Whether this particular door is now unlockable and it could just be a room you go into that has, you know, hidden weapons and things like that, a bit similar to how they did in Halo Infinite, or whether this is actually another way in and you can go through corridors that join that other recessed doorway looking structure further in. I don't know, but this is at least something I noticed that was noteworthy enough that I thought I'd mention it. Finally, Chief makes his way all the way down and gets to the trigger point of the cutscene. Now, right before it, there's a small object floating here in the center of the corridor. I'm unsure what it is. If it's a graphical glitch, then again, something that can be fixed. But it looks to me like it's probably a trigger point that hasn't been made invisible to the player yet. It seems like right as Chief kind of meets it, that's when the cutscene triggers. So I think it's a trigger point that just hasn't been made invisible. And then finally we have the cutscene with Chief checking corners in extremely rapid fashion, as you would expect for a Spartan with enhanced physiology and reaction times. I note the small forward light on the assault rifle turns off when Chief takes his finger off of the trigger. His boot tread is now very similar to Infinite's boot tread, including the ball of the foot hubs for his boot magnets. And I noticed that the AR torch automatically turns off when it is seated onto his back holster panel. And the final thing I want to note here is that the massive void below is now just pitch black, rather than the strange purple or almost glowing cyan that it was back in original CE and the Anniversary Edition respectively. And that's the 13-minute gameplay gone over with a fine-tooth comb with things I thought were as interesting. We'll just very briefly touch on a few things from the round the table discussion, which was what showcased and was live reacting to at HCS. Now, we see a human flood combat form here at 4 minutes and 57 seconds, which is, it's visceral, it's gory, it's swollen and mutated and twisted, it's gross in all of the best ways. I'm really looking forward to flood levels. Here at 4 minutes and 59 seconds, many thought that this was kind of a weird infection form with a long tail. It's actually not. It's actually these long plants from 343 Guilty Spark's swamp, which means that this is what the 343 Guilty Spark swamp portions are going to look like. A stark improvement to Halo CE Anniversary's swamp areas. And we can only hope that that kind of eerie, you're being watched from darkened corners, liminal kind of feel that we get from these internal spaces within the Silent Cartographer mirror over to the 343 Guilty Spark levels, where those internal spaces are dark and creepy and eerie and you feel like you're being watched, because that would be a stark improvement on, again, the overly glowing and neon version that we got in Halo CE Anniversary. Very briefly here at 5 minutes and 15 seconds we see a Flood pure form, the tank specifically, which perhaps suggests towards a containment breach, maybe even a mini boss fight. I've seen some people saying, I think I remember Luke saying about perhaps having one of these things come out of like the containment fields in the library. That would be awesome as kind of like a mini boss fight. I am so there for it, and I do have a lot of thoughts on kind of mini boss fights, so to speak, per level, but I'll address that in another video. And then finally we get the reveal of the 3 prequel levels, apparently to Halo CE. Now, in the concept art here, Chief is wearing the Mark IV helmet and Mark IV armor. Now, Chief wore his Mark IV armor. It was the first suit he put on, and he wore it from 2524 to August of 2552 when he upgraded to the Mark V. So whenever these particular prequel missions are taking place, they are well back in time, perhaps significantly earlier in Chief and Johnson's career. Now, there are 3 levels, so it is possible that at least maybe one of them takes place closer to the events of Halo CE, in which case it would be really good to see the mission to the UNSC Circumference, where Chief and Linda go aboard the Circumference to destroy the nav database and then come across Johnson, Jenkins and his squad, and that's the same mission where Linda gets shot, flatlines, and Chief shoves her into a cryopod to kind of keep her in that limbo state between alive and dead until she can get medical attention. It's possible that might be one of the levels, but most definitely from this concept art, this happens much further back in Chief's career. And broadly, that's all of the major things I noticed in this 13-minute gameplay demo, and a couple of little things I noticed in the roundtable discussion. Now, I have a lot more I want to discuss. I have a lot of thoughts on Sprint, but I think that needs its own dedicated video. I do want to pass my completely and utterly unfiltered thoughts on the Halo campaign evolved kind of narrative and where we're sitting, broadly speaking, about the rumours and the information out there and the fan reception. I want to do that, but I want to kind of maybe do that as like a summary section to a larger video where I kind of explore what I would do differently if I were to make or was in charge of the Campaign Evolved remake, because I've had a lot of requests of my perspectives on that, with some people even saying that they want to put me in charge, which, let's not jump the gun, I'm not done here yet, let's not ship me off to the franchise quite yet. But broadly, they're the kind of things that I found through this 30-minute gameplay trailer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we found here. Do you think there might be these expansive areas, you know, the door underneath the platform and perhaps the one further in the facility? Does this imply to more expansive content? Maybe they fleshed out the levels a little bit more and there's new areas to go. What do you think about implementing terminals and audio logs into this new campaign? Love to hear your thoughts on that and anything else you have in mind. Pop your comments down below, and until next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to tap that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Pop a comment down below on things you'd like me to cover in the future, or any thoughts on today's video. I'll just quickly take this opportunity to thank my patrons and YouTube supporters: Falcon X003, the singular Contender class Ancilla, Laser and Spartan 0137, two of the triumvirate of minds within the Metarch of my installation. My installation's monitors: Shane, Orion, Spartan 1029, 121 Esoteric Sight, Ashley and Sylphia. The creche of sub-monitors: Legion, Ryan, Labrat, Element 0, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma and Tony. My fleet of Strato Sentinels. My most loyal of Enforcers. And every single one of the awesome individuals helping to support the channel over on Patreon. It really does help and allows me to keep doing what I do, and I can't thank you all enough. Huge shout to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Balaz, Jimbo and Mori. Thank you for continuing to stand sentry over my installation from all threats metaphysical. And if you would like to help support the channel in a more visceral way, consider jumping aboard as a YouTube member or patron to earn tons of perks, merch and goodies along the way. Thank you again for watching, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.